Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Welcome to, again, Tehillim the Inside Story, number 4, part 4. As we always try and do, start with an inspirational story. So the story it's a true story, obviously. The name of someone called Rivka Siegel. Now, Rivka Siegel was a teacher from Baltimore, Maryland, who made Aliyah with her family 15 years ago and was looking for a job and found one as a Tehillim teacher, of all things, only in Israel. And she started digging into the book of Psalms, and out of necessity, she came to a love of its words, and Tehillim became her life's work. And she continues to teach women in Israel and released a book called Living Tehillim with her colleague Lisa Aitken. The two of them transformed their classes to text a wider audience who can learn from their lessons as well. The first book talks about Psalms 1 to 30. The second one came out, which includes 90 to 118. And the text, she said, is so powerful that it's a shame to miss out on the impact it can make. The book is called Living Tehillim. She says the following. She asked the question, why is saying Tehillim so powerful? She says, to start, Tehillim is the most awesome self-help book there is. It's so incredible. It will help you learn about yourself, give you tools to make it through the day, and navigate your relationships. People can utilize the Psalms to grow and become better, stronger people. Tehillim, and this is really the key line for this evening to frame what we're going to be talking about. Tehillim is not just something you say, it's something you do. You say it when you want someone to get better, for example, but it's got to transform you as well. Every verse is a tool that teaches us how we should treat each other in life and ourselves. She says the Hebrew words themselves are so powerful. Sometimes you'll have Tehillim groups where people sit and say the whole book 3 or 4 times. It's a good thing because the words definitely do something. But sometimes people leave and have no idea what they've just did. It's important to focus on the meaning of Tehillim. Learning about those feelings will help you have more kavanah, more intention and concentration in your prayers, and in turn being able to get closer to God. So I think this is the key verses here. It's what she say. Tehillim is not just something you say, it's something you do. And with that in mind, that's obviously what we've been trying to do here with the inside story into Tehillim. And that's tonight really framing what I'd like us to try and do this evening.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
What happens between book 30 and...
Yeah, you have to ask her. I don't know. I think she jumped them. She jumped to those ones which are those more commonly in the news. That's the note I've got here. But yeah, who knows? There may be another
Maybe filling in the gap.
Yeah. So what we've tried to do up to now is we've tried to understand the background to Tehillim. Obviously, understanding a little bit, trying to learn a little bit more about David HaMelech, about King David in the process, to understand where it came from, why it's so powerful. And we also looked at specific chapters as well, the 121, 130 for obvious reasons, and trying to understand why particularly those ones are the ones we use on the occasions when we use them. What I'd like to try to tonight is maybe sort of approach it from the reverse angle, which is, how do I explain this? Why is it that Tehillim, that certain chapters of Tehillim have become part of our prayers, and what is it about our prayers that they incorporate Tehillim? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's like 2 parts to it, yeah? And it's probably easy to explain what I mean by that by looking at something specifically, right? So much easier to concretize it, yeah? So if you look at the first source on our page, it's Tehillim at chapter 145. Have a really quick look at it, either in the Hebrew and in the English. It can be a little bit. It's quite a long one, 21 verses in total. Tehillah David. So a psalm of David. I will exalt God, God the King, and I will bless His name forever. B'chol yom every day I will bless Him, and I will praise His name forever. Any idea where and when we say Psalm 145? Now, it's a bit of a trick question because it is familiar to us, but it's also in the form we find it in the Book of Tehillim, it's slightly unfamiliar to us. Why?
Only part of it is there. I think it's in alpha order, so it's
yes.
It's either Anims and Mirrors or Ashrei.
Oh, very good. Okay, do you want to take a guess? A 50-50? Okay, nice. So Anims and Mirrors, I can tell you, doesn't come from Psalms.
Yeah,
okay, so that's what's that? It's not 50-50. What's that? Yeah, take one away. Yeah, take one away. Yeah.
Obviously, it's Ashrei.
It's Ashrei. Yeah? Okay. So very interesting. So this, Psalm 145, verses 1 to 21, are what we call Ashrei. But it's missing, if you look at the second source, it's missing its opening two verses. Yeah? Which actually come from different parts of Tehillim, really interestingly. Yeah?
And I could say the last line as well.
Yes, yeah. I was getting to that. I was getting that too. Yes. Look at
and some of the Siddurim list which.
Yes.
So some of them will have the chapter.
Yeah, it will tell you. You'll see, for example, in the art scroll, you'll see. So here it is, Ashrei Yoshvei Veisecha.
And it doesn't tell you which.
It does.
Oh, it does.
There's a little number there, hanging number there. Takes it to the notes here, and it will tell you where it comes from. Yeah, and then the next verse as well comes from another place, and then we've got here at the beginning of the line there. It tells you Tehillim Kuf Mem Hey 145. Okay, but that's from Tehillah David. That's from then onwards. Okay, so that's really interesting. Right, really interesting. So basically, what we've done is we've cannibalized bits of the book of Tehillim in order to create a tefillah, a prayer, which has become integral to our tefillot. Okay, why that is, hopefully we'll try and discover it tonight. And in terms of what that adds to Psalm 145 on its own, is also, I hope we'll see something very interesting. So if you look at the second box on the page, so yes, the opening words of Ashrei, where it takes the name from, is the verse in Tehillim chapter 84 verse 5. Ashrei Yoshvei Veisecha or Yalucha Sela. Happy are those, or fortunate are those, or praiseworthy are those who dwell in your house, God. They forever praise you, Selah. And then we carry on. Ashrei ha'am shikach aloi. Ashrei ha'am sh'Hashem elokav. Again, happy, fortunate, praiseworthy are the people who have it so. Praiseworthy, happy, fortunate are the people whose God is Hashem. Tehillah David. And then we carry on, as we know. And as Henry quite rightly said. And then, right at the end, the psalm itself is if you look back to the source first of all, Tilas Hashem Yudaber Pi, Vivarak B'asar Hashem Kol Shalom Va'ed. My mouth shall utter the praises of Hashem, and all creatures shall bless His holy name forever and ever. V'anachnu nevarechka me'atav yad olam hallelujah. Okay, and obviously when we say it, it's part of Tefillah. We change the word "ka" to God's name. So that last verse is from chapter 115, verse 18. But we will bless Hashem now and forever. Hallelujah. Okay. Now, to try and understand why that is the case, I can't do any better than the actual Art Scroll commentary. Okay, most succinctly. Well, the Art Scroll has quoted it from somewhere else, which I could have just brought anyway, but I might as well just share it with you from the Art Scroll. So the first question is, why has Ashrei? Firstly, we call it Ashrei because of the opening words, but why a bit like Aleinu, right? A lot of things are just by the opening words, right? Even shuls are known not by their the road they're in, right? Kinlos, right? Yes, Croxdale, right? Yavna. I'm not going to say in the school, but you know what I mean, yeah. Often we things are just taking the name from the first word, but why wasn't Ashrei sufficient with just verses 1 to 21 of Psalm 145, the total unit? Right? What were Chazal who added to it? And you're going to ask me, when does this actually happen? We don't exactly know when it was formulated. We can assume it was by the Anshe Knesset HaGadolah, the men of the Great Assembly. We know for sure it was already in place from the time of the Gemara, because the Gemara is going to reference it, and question why it's like this, and what's so powerful about it, why it's so important. But that is as we have it. Okay. So says the Art Scroll. I'm just going to see where he says it from. So he says it. The Rambam writes that the sages praised anyone who recited the hymns from the book of Psalms every day, from Tehillah David, a psalm for David. This is what we've got here, 145 verse 1, to the end of the book. Remember, we know there are 150 chapters, so 145 to the end are these 6 psalms. He says it's become customary to recite other verses before and after these, and the sages instituted their blessing Baruch Shama which we say right at the beginning of Pesukei December, before these psalms, and a blessing Yishtabach at the end. It's almost sandwiched in between. Okay. He says, from the Rambam's formulation, it's clear that the 6 psalms beginning with Ashrei are the very essence of Pesukei de Zimra, and this is based on the Talmud that says that Rabbi Yossi would say, "May we share in those who complete Hallel every day." The Talmud explains that in Rabbi Yossi's context, Hallel means the 6 concluding chapters of psalms that we are about to recite. And then where does he say it? Where is he saying? Yeah, as noted above. This is the Levush. Interesting, isn't it? I saw earlier that he was quoting the Levush, but I can't see it now. Strangely. It doesn't matter, okay. Okay, this is the first one. Yeah, it's the first one. It says here, as noted above, Psalm 145 begins with the words Tehillim David, as we see it. The two preliminary verses, each beginning with the word Ashrei, are affixed to Tehillim David for 2 reasons. A, by expressing the idea that those who can dwell in God's house of prayer and service are praiseworthy. These verses set the stage for the succeeding psalms of praise. For we, the praiseworthy ones, are about to praise God in whose house we dwell. And B, the word Ashrei is found 3 times in these verses. Okay? I'm not going to explain why, because we're going to see why. The Gemara will allude to why that is. Just know, so you see, look again. So the second box, Ashrei Yoshei Vesecha, and then Ashrei Ha'am Shekachaloi, Ashrei Ha'am She'Hashem Elokav. Right? So 3 times. So got it here. Ashrei, Ashrei, and Ashrei. Yeah. So there are 3 times we use the word Ashrei. Okay? That is the Holy Trinity. Okay? Okay. So let's try and understand why it is. Okay, so turn over. First we see Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch. So something similar that they had in the Art Scroll. The 6 concluding chapters of the Book of Psalms are the most important gift of King David's divinely inspired hymns that Israel treasures so greatly. These 6 Psalms, 145 to 150, are an essential component of our daily prayers. Our sages attach much significance to Psalm 145 in particular, and stated whoever recites a praise by David 3 times a day is assuredly worthy of a share in the world to come. Gemara in Brachos 4b, which we'll see in a moment in its entirety. When recited in prayer, this psalm is always introduced with the 2 verses from the other psalms, 84:5 and 144:15. These verses contain the word fortunate 3 times, an allusion to this psalm being recited 3 times a day. When do we say it 3 times a day? Twice in Shacharit, one at the beginning of Pesukei Zimra, and one at the, almost sandwiching the Amida really, one at the beginning in Pesukei Zimra, and one at the end of Shacharit just after the Amida, and then at the beginning of Mincha. Okay, so 3 times a day. And these verses are so closely identified with Psalm 145 that it's commonly referred to as Ashrei, meaning fortunate. Okay, so let's understand. So that's where we get Ashrei from. Why particularly those 2 verses are chosen? Because they have the word Ashrei in them 3 times, alluding to the fact that the Gemara says that praiseworthy is the person who says Ashrei 3 times. Why is that? Let's look at that a bit further. So look at the Gemara in the next source. Gemara in Brachos says, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Amar Rabbi Avina, Kol ha'omer Tehillah David b'chol yom 3 pa'amim. Anybody who says Tehillah David, meaning Psalm 145, 3 times a day, muftach loi shu ben ha'olam haba, can be confident that they are a ben ha'olam haba. Now the translation here says they can be assured of a place in the world to come. Now a ben olam haba doesn't necessarily mean that. Okay, ben olam haba, almost like a bar mitzvah, right? Yeah, bar and ben are the same word, right? One Hebrew, one Aramaic. A ben olam haba means like somebody who is of the world to come. Somebody has a connection to the world to come, which presumably that's why it's been translated like that, to mean has a place in the world to come. The obvious question on that is, does that mean you can do anything else you like? Right? As long as you say Ashrei 3 times a day, boom, you're in. Yeah, that's your golden ticket. Does that work? Does it work like that?
No, but it's a big stepping stone.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
As in, if you're doing that, then okay, you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm stepping up to being automatically in the Harlem above. Well, let's just do a little bit more.
Okay. I think that's a nice idea.
If we do that as a minimum,
Yeah.
maybe life gets in the way a bit. It's a minimum, and maybe just get a little bit extra brownie point for doing so.
Okay, yeah, I think you're definitely on the right lines. That's not suggesting that this is an absolute guarantee, but it's a step, it's a minimum, right? It's the baseline.
Is this the only one that starts with Tehillim David?
No, we've got others.
But when we talk about it, it's referring specifically to
Yeah,
Psalm
because we have a
145.
tradition when the Gemara says Tehillim David, it means this one. It means this one. Yeah.
Is it that if
And we'll see why that is a good question. We'll see why that is in a moment.
if you're short of a place of the word, you're already quite at a spiritual level. You're already a spiritual person, so that your actions are already thinking at a different, slightly higher level than other people,
Right.
perhaps who aren't quite at that level yet.
Yeah.
So you're assured, because if you say you are of the world to come, perhaps that you're slightly more.
So otherworldly.
Slightly more. Slightly more aware of it, slightly more spiritual.
Right. Yeah, a nice way of looking at it. But we really have to understand what is it then about these 21 verses, which have been obviously bookended by the first two verses at the beginning and one at the end, that elevate a person to this status of a ben olam haba. Yeah. What is it that they have that gives a person who says it 3 times a day that status of being otherworldly, so to speak? Yeah. And again, so we're beginning clear. It doesn't mean guaranteed space. It means you can be confident that you are somebody who is in the realms of some connection to the world to come. And we'll see, hopefully, exactly what that means. Now, Gemara asks the obvious question. You can't just make a statement like that without qualifying it, right? So the next paragraph says, Gemara, my timer. What's the reason that merely saying it 3 times a day means you're guaranteed of being a ben olam haba? Says the Gemara, if you're going to say, because this psalm is so encompassing, because it every verse it's an alphabetic acrostic. Yes, each verse starts with another letter of the Hebrew alphabet, except for a nun. I'm going to just preempt it before anyone was going to jump in and say that. And we'll come back to that in a moment. The only letter that's missing is a nun. Okay, trust me. Okay, it's not there. Okay. One says if that's the reason, you say, there's something very special about it. And you see throughout our tefillahs, there are other tefillahs that have the aleph base, particularly, we seem to like using that because those 22 letters in the aleph base are the letters with which God created the world. So they are the building blocks of creation of the reality as we know it, and therefore we're borrowing that term. Remember, we've spoken this before, that God created the world through speech, right? So employing the Hebrew letters, yeah. So when we are employing them, we're in some way recreating, or in some way tapping into that energy that those letters possess in creating the worlds that we want to inhabit. Okay, so if you're going to say that's the reason, which is a good reason, Neymar Ashrei Timimiderech this year betimnoya upin. Well, what about Psalm 119? Yeah, and if anyone knows Psalm 119, the longest psalm in the book of Psalms. If you get lumbered with that one, you'll have to say that one. Yeah, well done. Where you'll find the alphabetical acrostic not once, as you find in Ashrei in 145, but 8 times. That's why it's so long, right? Yeah.
But you get 8 verses per letter. It doesn't run through the alphabet 8 times.
Right.
It runs through it once, but 8. It's 8 for each.
Yes. Still.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way.
Yeah.
It's arranged.
Right, but remember, and the Maharal has a beautiful idea on that Psalm 119, because we know that the physical world is represented by the number 7, the spiritual world by the number 8, and that psalm is about transcending the physical world. So if you're going to talk about, there's a spiritual power to employing the alphabetical acrostic, then why not go for 8 times rather than once, right? Particularly if you're talking about the world to come, which is beyond the physical world. Right, so that can't be the reason. Elamishum de isbe. So says the Gemara. Well, then, okay, that's not the reason. Maybe that's because it has the verse in it. Posech es yodecha. We say about Hashem. Posech es yodecha. You open your hands and you provide for all the needs of all living beings. Right, which is a really important thing. Again, in terms of recognizing, we'll develop this idea a bit further later. That it's a recognition by saying that verse in Psalm 145, we are recognizing that everything comes from God. And therefore, almost like in the terms of Rabbi Kiva, well, the rest is just commentary around that. Yeah. Once you acknowledge that everything comes from God, and that was some of the overriding messages in some of the other psalms as well, weren't they? Yeah. But this is very specific. Right? This is like the one principle that everything else is based on. This is the foundation. God provides everything we need. Yeah. Is
that when we say Shacharis, when we say that line, we
yeah.
fill in?
Yeah. Because the word yadecha, yeah. Again, we also see it says in here, concentrate. It says here, concentrate while citing this verse, right?
Yes,
yeah. And I'll explain. We'll see in a moment why that is. We'll see because that's actually very codified in halacha. Why that is. We'll come back to it in a moment. But the Gemara now is suggesting, okay, it's not because of the alphabetical acrostic, because you'll find that somewhere else 8 times more powerfully. What about the fact that it has posechet yadecha with this fundamental of faith, which is Hashem provides everything we need? Says the Gemara, Neima Halel Gadol. Yeah, but you can find out. But then, therefore, why not say? Okay, you don't have to say 145. Say 136. Where it says no sin lechem l'chol basar. On Shabbos we don't say this during the week, but on Shabbos we say that long list of hodus. Remember on Seder night? Yes. It's quite difficult saying it after 4 cups of wine, but on Shabbos morning we say it because we've got a little bit more longer time. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, the long list of hodus. Yeah, and just by saying, no sin lechem l'chol basar, ki l'olam chazdoi, his kindness endures forever. What were we saying before that? No sin lechem l'chol basar, he gives bread to all human beings. Yeah, and bread is synonymous with everything we need. So if it's going to be on that reason, that acknowledgement that God provides everything we need, then what about Psalm 136? Ella, so it can't be that. Ella says the Gemara, Ella mishum t'isbei tarte. The reason why 145 was chosen as a special one is because it contains both of these things. It contains an alphabetic acrostic, and it contains poseches yodecha. So the building blocks of creation, we're borrowing, we're tapping into that energy, and we're acknowledging that God provides everything we need. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara also ends off by saying, Rabbi Yochanan, and this is where I headed off. Those who say, well, it's not really a full acrostic because it's missing a letter. And nun ba'ashrei. Why is the letter nun not found in Ashrei? Because the letter nun is synonymous, it refers to the downfall of the Sonei Yisrael. This is the Gemara using a euphemism. When we talk about the haters of Jewish people, it actually means the Jewish people. Right? It refers to the downfall of the haters of the Jewish people, those who hate the Jewish people, actually means the Jewish people themselves. Right? The Gemara never likes to use it explicitly. Right? The Pasuk says, "Naf lo tosif kum betulas Yisrael." The virgin or the unmarried virgin of Israel has fallen; she will rise no more. Right? She's been abandoned, and no one will raise her up. Which begins with the letter nun. Due to this verse, this is an text commentary in the English. Ashrei does not include a verse beginning with the letter nun. Okay. All right. So, what is the Gemara here telling us? The reason why Ashrei has such a special place in our tefillahs, we say it 3 times a day, is because a person who says it can be assured that they are ben olam haba, whatever that means for the moment. And why is that? Because we are employing the Aleph base, building blocks of creation of our world, and we are acknowledging that God provides everything for us. Okay. Having said that, let's move it on from the Gemara to halacha. And we referenced just a moment ago. Says the Shulchan Aruch, Sarech lechaven beparshal beperek posech es yadecha bepasuk posech es yadecha. Person is required to concentrate, to have the kavanah, to have the correct intentions when saying the words posech es yadecha in this verse. Ve'im loy kivein, and if you don't concentrate when you're saying that, sarech la'achsov le'omer pam acheres, you'd have to go back and repeat it. And similar halacha we have with the opening bracha of the Amida. The halacha says, the Shulchan Aruch says the exact same thing. If a person isn't concentrating on that opening bracha, where we're talking about God's greatness and obviously his association with the forefathers, if you didn't concentrate during that bracha, you were still, and I think about the Rabbi's drasha, unlikely, but a possibility. You never know. You never lose hope. Then according to halacha, you need to go back and repeat it. Now we say actually nowadays you wouldn't go back and repeat it because the likelihood is the second time you're not going to have the right kavanah either. If you couldn't do it the first time, you're not going to get it the second time. But in theory, we see that to fulfill the obligation of saying it, you have to have the right intention. And here is with posech es yodecha. And says the Ramah, the Rav Moshe Isserlis, the Ashkenazi glossary, and v'omer in posuk v'anachnu nuvarech ka acha tehillah l'David. So the term, the whole both of these earlier sources, I'm talking about the 13th century, 15th century, the Shulchan Aruch, they said that you add on that final verse to the end of Ashrei. Okay, so we see there's something really powerful then. So not only did the Gemara mention it, that's one of the reasons why Ashrei is so central to our tefillahs, and therefore why it is a guarantee that someone is this ben olam haba. But codified in halacha is you need to properly, even if you don't concentrate on all of the Ashrei, at least posech es yodecha. Okay, that you've got to concentrate on, which again is a really powerful indication that there's something within those words which is so fundamental. That's why Ashrei has become central to our prayers. And that's what I hope we also were trying to discover.
Is it also because it's actually quite good to have a couple of pointers? It's a bit like when reading Megillah Esther, that you actually have to have a pointer that sort of jerks you into what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely need. That's why also there are times when we stand up, we sit down as well. There are times when we need to.
It makes you more present
100%.
Because of that.
Yeah.
Sort of brings you there.
Yeah, 100%. But the fact that the fact that the Gemara has honed in on it and said, well, because it's got posech es yodecha in it, that's why it was chosen. And then the halakha then codifies it and says you need to concentrate on it, otherwise you've not tapped into the power of Psalm 145. Is pointing to something really powerful. So let's see what we're trying to understand from that. If you turn over, says Abu Draham on his commentary on Ashrei in the Siddur. He says, anyone who said, he's quoting the Gemara, anyone who says a psalm of praise for David 3 times every day is assured a place in the world to come. Again, he's used that similar language, but we can understand the subtlety of it. This is because it's impossible that one would not recite the Ashrei with proper intention at least one of the 3 times. Yeah, and this is actually really interesting. It's very much like the Rambam. The Rambam says, why is it we have so many mitzvahs? Right? We have 613 mitzvahs. Why just give us a few, right? 613, He says because, it's either Rambam or Rambam, so apologies. I think it's either one of them says, I think it's the Ramban now. He says because for a person to assure themselves a place in the world to come, they have to fulfill at least one mitzvah in their lifetime with the correct intentions. Completely with the correct intentions. Now, because that's so difficult, we're given so many. We're given a lot. In order to ensure that if we don't get them all right, we may get at least one right. Yeah? And again, this is maybe an argument. Also, people often ask, why do we say the same prayers again and again and again? The danger is, as you're saying, is that, that element of rote, if you know the words really well, you're just rattling off. I would argue the other way around, which is it gives us an opportunity to make friends with those words. They become very familiar to us. And yes, of course, it's a challenge to imbue them with meaning, but at least you're not struggling to say them because you know them. Right, so it can go both ways, but at least you've got the opportunity of actually saying it with the correct kavanah because you know what those words are. Okay, so you have an interesting idea. So we say it 3 times a day because at least one of those could it be at least once a day. It's going to be with the right intention. The Gaonim explain that if one did not have proper intention kavanah, at least when saying you open your hands, you must go back and repeat it again, as we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. The sages says he is assured of a place in the world to come. Not because this is the only commandment through which a person merits a place in the world to come. Rather, if the commandments are equally balanced, this additional commandment would tip the balance favourably. Okay, and again, this is very much like the Rambam's idea that we should always view ourselves as equally balanced between being found guilty and found innocent, being found deserving and undeserving. One more mitzvah can tip the balance. Right? Rather, so it teaches us that this is like the other commandments. Again, really powerful to say that, there's no mitzvah in the Torah to say Ashrei. Right? And yet, it would appear that the sages are taking it to the level of it has the same value as one of the other 613 mitzvahs. This is because it is entirely about praise and thanksgiving to the Omnipresent, who is the provider of the world. God in his mercy provides all beings with their needs. One who says this with proper intention certainly has a lowly spirit, meaning humble. Right? Which is something which obviously we aspire to. So what's the Abu Dharam here adding to our understanding?
It's making it relatively straightforward to understand. Why we're doing it is giving us a good reason to say, look, at least once a day, concentrate on this one.
Yeah. And if not on all of it, at least on this bit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is the essence of it. This is the core.
You will be rewarded accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's also answering for us that question which we were saying was, if the Gemara made that very bold statement without explaining it, which is, the person who says this is Muftach ben Olam Haba. The person is assured to be a ben Olam Haba, however we want to understand that. Right? At its most, taking it at its highest, it is assured a place in the world to come. But at the very least, somebody who has some connection, association with the world to come. Someone who is able to transcend this world. More doesn't qualify. How can, just by saying these words, do that? Says the Abu Dhaham, don't think that it's just through this. Right? This is like a nice added extra. It gives us an opportunity to say something with the right intention, which helps us get to where we need to get to. Right? And I think we will see that actually it's setting the tone for us. That by saying it 3 times a day, we are reminding ourselves of why we're here. And we're going to see the last couple of sources, we'll see more detail. But this idea of being a Ben Olam Haba, as opposed to a Ben Olam Hazeh, a person of this world. We live in this world, right? Physically we're here, but our minds are somewhere else. Yeah, we're working. This is not the end.
I have days like that.
Yes, I think we all do. Yeah, no, I think particularly also, we talk about, at the moment, we're physically here, but our hearts are in Israel, right? But on a constant basis, yes, we live in the physical world, but our hearts and minds should be directed to the spiritual world. How do we achieve that when we're so involved in the physical world, where we are physical beings? How can we? I mean, Judaism is not about sitting around and contemplating our navel, right? We don't. You can't.
When we pray, part of it is praying with kavanah and concentrating on words.
Mm-hmm.
I think is part of getting that connection, because that's all it's there for.
Sure, that's right. 100%. That we are. It's a moment when we take time out of our schedule, right? We stop. On Shabbat, for sure, that's the whole day we stop. But during the week, 3 times a day, we stop for a moment. Yeah. And we contemplate what's it all about. What's what we're doing here? Is this our ultimate existence, or is this merely a means to an end? Or in the words of Pirkei Avot, we said, this world is like a corridor to the world to come. Like you prepare yourself in this world for the world to come. Like your person prepares themselves in the entrance hall to go into the banqueting hall. Right? You didn't get to banqueting hall and say, right, I've made it. You didn't get to the entrance hall, the lobby, and say, oh, I've made it. Right? You're merely passing through. Right? That's not the ultimate achievement. You're always looking, for the door to open. Yeah. So I think the Abu Dharam is adding to what the Gemara is trying to tell us, which is this is not a guarantee, but this is a helpful step up to thinking beyond the physical world. So let's drill down a little bit more into some of the verses themselves. So the opening verse, it says, the second verse, B'chol yom avarakaka v'Allah shimcha l'olam va'ed. Says David HaMelech in verse number 2, every day I will bless you and I will praise your name forever. Yeah. Says Rav Hirsch, here David HaMelech declares, I will dedicate myself to serve you and to fulfill your will in loyal obedience. For in serving God, man causes God's name to be blessed. Getting straight out. Yeah, saying this is my purpose for being here. Yeah, God, I can't give you anything because you don't need anything from me. Yeah, you lack nothing. But what I can give you, what I can offer, is my loyalty, is my service, is my dedication to you. is my bracha. And again, I may have talked about this before. It's really important when we talk about brachot. When we say a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, we're not saying, I know the old English translation, blessed art thou, O Lord. Right? We're not blessing God. God doesn't need our blessings. What are we saying? We're saying you, God, are the source of all blessings. And again, I may have spoken before, the word bracha, as we know, is like the word brecha, which means like a spring, a source. We bend our knees, right? A knee is also that, it's a source of something, right? That we're acknowledging God as a source of. So when we make a bracha before we eat or we do a mitzvah, we're not blessing God for having what He's given us. We're acknowledging and thanking God for what we are about to enjoy. We'll do.
When it says forever and ever, does it mean in this world and the next world?
Possibly, quite possibly. Or it even could mean that I'm leaving, not only am I doing it during my lifetime, but I'm going to leave a legacy of that to continue as well after me as well. But it could either way.
And we have that discussion in the Haggadah somewhere as well. So my brain's just gone into a different direction. So having come across that phraseology somewhere else as well.
And we say it a lot, we say it a lot.
Yeah. It's all right.
Yeah. Okay. We think it'll come back to me. That's all right. Okay. So that's what we mean by that. And we look at the next verse. It's not actually the next verse. Where is it?
It's near the end.
Korova, thank you. Yud Ches, 18. So you haven't got it in English. You've got it in the Hebrew. 3 lines up from the bottom of the Hebrew in the first source. Korov Hashem l'chol korov, l'chol asher yikruhu ve'emet. God is near to those who call Him, in truth. Okay. Says Rav Hirsch again. He is near to all who call upon Him, but His nearness can be perceived only by those who call upon Him in truth, who truly mean to have God enter into their lives. So again, only if you are of the mindset, which is, I want God to be in my life, only then will God be in your life. Again, it's a bit like midah, a bit of measure for measure, but also a little bit like, Gemara says, we'll see in a moment as well, that God leads a person down the path they want to choose. They choose, right? If you want to choose a path, God says, fine, I'll help you go down that path. Whether right or wrong, that's the path you choose. God responds to us in kind. And we see that right at the beginning of human history, right? With Adam and Rishon, right? After they ate from the tree, what happens? They hide. What does God say? Ayeka, where are you? Hide and seek, first example of hide and seek in the Torah. What's going on? Of course God knows where they are. The commentaries explain God is giving firstly Adam an opportunity to say to God where he is, but also I think on a deeper level God is saying, well, what's going on here? Adam, you think you can hide from me? Okay, I'll play along with it. You want to pretend I can't see you? I'll pretend I can't see you. If that's the type of relationship you want to have, which is you think you can do things in this world that God doesn't see, right? Then God will pretend doesn't see. If you think you can live your life without God, then fine. Live your life without God. But if you genuinely feel that you want God in your life and you call to God to be near to you, then God will respond in kind. It's as simple as that. It's a reciprocal relationship. And then it goes on. It's the next verse. Ruson yireyav ya'aseh. Those who fear him, the will of those who fear him he fulfills. He hears their cry and delivers them. Says the Yisich Yitzchak, another commentary, while God hears all who cry unto him in truth, he answers those who fear him, who subject their desires to his will. Again, I think it's really important to talk about this idea of fearing God. Okay, and I may have mentioned this before because it's really something I feel really strongly about, which is we misunderstand the concept of fear. Right? God doesn't want us to be afraid of him. Right? That's not what it means. Just like, and the word fear, yira, we talk when the Torah talks about, when in the Ten Commandments says, honor your father and mother. We read a couple of weeks ago, there's a similar verse that says, Ish imov aviv tira'u. A person should fear tira'u, same word as yira, should fear their mother and father. Now again, does a parent want their child to fear them?
No.
No. What does a parent want their child to do? When a parent says to a young child, do not speak to strangers, they're trying to make the child afraid?
No.
They're
They're
trying to
trying to
make
be
the
careful.
Yeah.
Careful, right? They're warning them of the dangers, right? Because they fear for their child's safety. And a responsible parent has to tell their child what those dangers are. The parent doesn't want the child to be afraid of them. They want them to share the same fears as them. You want the child to understand. They want to be in some way be afraid of speaking of the dangers of X, Y, or Z. Similarly with God. God says, do this and don't do that. And fear me, meaning share the same fears as I have for you. The reason why God tells us to do certain things and not do certain things are the very same reasons why parents tell their children to do certain things and not do certain things. Why? Because we're afraid, because we care, we're concerned for their safety. That's a negative thing. On the negative side, that they shouldn't do anything that should be damaging to them. And we're also concerned that they should be healthy, happy, and successful. We're concerned for the positive things, aspects of their life. Same exactly thing with God. He only wants us to be happy, healthy, successful, and safe, both physically and spiritually. So spiritually tells us, don't do this and do that, right? Don't work for 7 days straight because it's not good for you spiritually and maybe physically as well. Yeah. Don't eat certain things. Don't do certain things. Do this, do that, right? Certain things are damaging to us physically, but more importantly, spiritually, right? A ben olam haba, someone who's a ben olam haba that we're talking about here, is someone who's equally concerned for their physical well-being as they are for their spiritual well-being. Yeah, and again, measure for measure. If a person is concerned, shares the same concerns that God has, then God will share the same concerns that person themselves has. Yeah. So when a person cries out to the God in truth, he answers those who fear him, meaning who share the same fears as him, who subject their desires to his will. Right? Because if God sees that we are conscious of the things that he is, so to speak, afraid of for our benefit, then he will listen to the things that we are concerned about. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. I think that's a really powerful idea. Okay, again, idea of why this psalm particularly is something that speaks about being a ben olam haba.
Without davening, so we have a set of prayers for davening. They are broadly similar, but not exactly the same if you go from Ashkenazi to Sephardi to Chabad. But the words of the Psalms are the same.
Yeah, sure.
Once they were codified, whenever it was, they are exactly the same.
Yeah.
Even though in some of the books, certain things are picked out and done in a different order.
Yeah.
But the Psalms themselves are whichever book you pick up of Psalms.
Because the Psalms predated the formulation of the Siddur.
Right.
Yeah. I can guarantee you though that both for Ashkenazi, Sephardi, and Chabad, it's the same God.
Yes.
As far as I know. I'm assuming. Yes. But yes, it's based on, and again, it's like regional accents, right? Yeah. You're saying the same words. They might sound like the same words, right? But just in your own way, right? So the minhagim, the customs in terms of prayer, same ideas behind it. The basic structure is the same. How you get to that point, do we sit down for the Kaddish, or stand up for Kaddish, those sort of things. Yeah, do we say prayers in certain orders, certain prayers are added, some are not. Yeah, those are based on local custom, and how it's developed over the centuries. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. The words of the Psalms are always identical in all.
Then you get different tunes and accents to throw you off completely.
Well, that's exactly. Yeah, that just keeps it interesting. I come back to your point, which is you get used to it. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's the best way I can put it. It's just how things are developed according to local customs. But yeah, the words of the Psalms predate that, and therefore they would never change. Yeah. Actually, interesting question. And all universally across all different customs, everyone has Ashrei in the form it has it, meaning Psalm 145 with the two additions at the beginning and the addition at the end as well, universally accepted. Okay, again, so that will that sort of dates it for us as well in terms of how far back that was established, really interestingly. Okay, so those are just a couple of ways of looking at some of the verses themselves. If we dive a little bit deeper into the case of Yitzchak, it says the case of Yitzchak, and this really is talking about why, particularly, we focus on Posech Es Yodecha, you open your hands and provide for all. It says, unless there is gratitude for favors received, what would keep the world going? God created the universe as an act of kindness, and even though it's not within our capacity to return this kindness even minimally, especially since God is not in need of anything, ingratitude on our part would negate the act of generosity by God. Heavenly beings accord him honor, gratitude, it says in Psalm 29. Human beings are similarly asked to do so, each according to their status and stature in the universe. Again, we can't give God anything, right? But the minimum we can do is acknowledge that God gives us everything. Yeah. Again, part of transcending this world is being able to step out of it and recognize that everything we've got in this world is purely based on God's kindness to us. And again, those who were following, we talked about this when we were talking about the DHL, when we were talking about Emunah and Bitachon, about faith and trust in God. That's very much, wasn't it, that it's about recognizing that everything we have comes not through our own merit, not because we're necessarily deserving of it. And even if we are deserving of it, we could never be fully deserving, have accrued so much merit that we deserve everything we have. Because could you imagine it? Just the fact that, thank God, we were able to see. Can you imagine the amount of merits that must use up? Yeah? Can you imagine? To have the faculty of sight must be, that must be how many points that we must have to be able to have that capacity. Just that. So therefore, to have all the things we have, it must be way beyond any merit we could ever accrue by however many mitzvahs we do, however much Torah we study, however much kindness we show to other people. It would never be enough to pay for the bill, so to speak, if God was to serve us with a bill. So it sends us the bill. And therefore we have to recognize, part of Emunah B'tachon is recognizing that everything we have is not based on merit, it's based on God's kindness. And how do we acknowledge that? What's the only way we can in some way repay that, or tip the balance back into credit, so to speak, is by
blessing God.
Yeah, by thanking God. Yeah, by acknowledging it. And remember, thanking and acknowledging are the same Hebrew word, right? Hodu is the same word as thank you, as appreciation. Yeah. Ashrei, happy and fortunate, is the same thing. To be happy, to recognize how fortunate you are. There's no coincidence, the fact that they're the same word. That's the very least we can do. Right? But yet it's so important because it's the only thing we can do. Yeah. And again, takes us beyond being so absorbed in. And again, remember the Torah. Remember Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of his life in the Devarim says to the Jewish people, there will come a point in your history where everything will be going really well for you. You'll be settled in the land will start producing its produce for you, and you'll say, Kochi v'otzim yadi, you'll say, the might and the power of my hand created all this. We'll sit back and say, aren't we clever? Look what we've been able to achieve. We didn't need God for it, right? And again, the old story of, the person who's looking for parking space, yeah? I told you that story, that one before. Yeah? When it's all going well, we don't need God, do we? We did it all ourselves. Only when you need God, you start asking for him, right? But in truth, as we know, everything comes from God. Yeah, and that the danger of being so subsumed by the world in which we live and taking everything for granted, we become so removed from being ben olam habaz because we're so much ben olam hazeh. Yeah, and again, Ashrei is that moment in time we just stop for a moment and extract ourselves from it. So again, is it now adding layers to it? We're not saying that it guarantees you a place in the world to come. We're saying that it guarantees you are able to think beyond this world to the world to come. That we're here not just, I think another layer to it is, that we're not just here for the physical aspects of our existence. They're merely a means to an end. For us to enjoy, yes, while we're here, to appreciate that we have them, but to recognize that not to get swallowed up by it and lose sight of why we're here. Yeah, again, the old Moshalim they're told by like the Dubna Magid, the story, the person who goes to foreign land to collect diamonds. The diamonds are all scattered over the streets, right? You can pick them up, yeah. he's got a certain limited amount of time there to pick them up as many. But as the days go on, the first day he's there, he's gathering them quickly, and everyone says, "What's the rush? You've got plenty of time till the boat comes to collect you." You're right. And he gradually thinks, "Oh yeah, you're right," and he stops worrying about those and he starts looking at other things. Yeah, and then eventually the last day comes and he hasn't had a chance to collect the gemstones and he goes home with nothing. Right? That's what we have a limited time here. We think we have so long here. Yeah, and if you've got plenty of time, I'll do mitzvahs. There's time for mitzvahs, right? Let me take care of what I want to take care of first, and then we'll do mitzvahs when I've got the moment, right?
And then tomorrow never comes.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the danger of being a Ben Omar Hazeh. Yeah, that's what we're trying to avoid. Next paragraph. All the favors received from God fall under one of three categories, one of three headings. 1, life. 2, wisdom and knowledge. And 3, livelihood, sustenance. Compare chapter 42 in Isaiah, chapter 2 in Proverbs, and chapter 145 in the book of Psalms. We haven't got time to look at others too, but obviously this one we know. Our prayers reflect our gratitude for these 3 kinds of loving kindness shown to us by God. It says there are 3 types of favors we receive from God, reflected by the 3 times, which we reflect in the 3 times that we say Ashrei every day. Yeah. That's the first thing. And then thirdly, since it's obviously impossible for man to express his gratitude adequately, God commands us to give 3 times a half a shekel. In this way, we express symbolically that we owe gratitude for the 3 aspects of kindness received from God on an ongoing basis. This is what is meant by the expression kofer nefesh. It talks about giving a half. When the Torah talks about the people have to give a half a shekel, and it says it 3 times, it says it's a kofer nefesh. It's a ransom for your soul. In some way, by giving this half a shekel, by acknowledging that we owe our very life, number 1, our wisdom and intellect, number 2, and our livelihood and sustenance, number 3, to God, we're in some way ransoming it back to ourselves. We're redeeming ourselves by the fact that we've acknowledged where all these things come from. We thank God for the gift of meaningful life, for the knowledge and reason granted, enabling us to lay the foundation of the tabernacle which represents the seat of Torah wisdom. Finally, we thank God for the legislation of sacrifices, by means of which we express our acknowledgement that He is the source of our food and sustenance. Again, I know korbanos are a very difficult thing to think about, but the idea, again, the first word, korban, means to get closer to God. How do you get closer to God? By giving of something that you have, something that's meaningful to you, to God. God doesn't need it. Again, the prophets will say, when the prophets berate the Jewish people for being really careful about the sacrificial order, but not caring about how they look after each other. Does God care about all the bulls that you offer? God has no need for those bulls, right? They're not for God's benefit; they're for our benefit. Yeah. So everything, all the mitzvot, everything we're given, it's not for God's benefit; it's for our benefit. And by merely acknowledging that, again, that's the step to becoming this Ben Olam Haba. Okay, final 2 sources. Pelo Yoet's a fascinating work of Musa, very practical book of ethical teachings. He says the following, and I mentioned this before. The Gemara says in Makos, "Shebederech sha'adam rotze lelech, molichim osoi." The path upon which a person wants to follow, or chooses to follow, is the path upon which they're led. Yeah, meaning we are beings who have free will. And nothing will stop us, not even God, will stop us going along that path. In fact, we're going to go on to suggest, and in fact, God assists us on that path, whether for right or wrong, because that's the way the system got set up. Because you cannot be held accountable for what you do if you weren't free to do it, nor can you be rewarded for what you do if you're being forced to do it. That's how it has to be. Okay. With that in mind, he says the following. It's quite a difficult Hebrew. Let's see if we can unpick it here. He says, and again, sorry, there's no English translation. Mi she'osim malachto keva, a person who makes their work their fixed pursuit, meaning that's the whole that they see that as their primary. That's it. I don't speak French, but that's yes. Okay, clearly I can tell. They make it their primary purpose in life. Yeah. That's what they're here for, to make a livelihood. And they all they're trying to achieve is wealth for themselves. Yeah, that all they want to do is fill their houses with everything. God prepares it for them, meaning he helps them be successful, to gather, to find motzi harbe, to find a lot. Right? If the person works really, really hard to be successful, God will help them be successful. That's the good news. V'az choshev yafe asisi. But then the person thinks, well, I did really well there. I worked hard, and I've achieved much. Shetarachti b'oshe b'osai lahaviach harbe. She'im lo kein meichin hayisim otzi ha'osas halalu. I have gained this wealth because I've worked hard at it. And if I hadn't have worked hard, I wouldn't have got so much. It's clearly. They see that. That's the clear correlation. You work hard, you achieve. You amass wealth. End of the third line. However, that was the good news. About God helping them to get that. This is the bad news. Now the problem is they don't realize that if they just did a little bit, God will also have helped them as well. A small amount of effort will also have achieved results. Maybe not such big results, but results as well. And if a person wants to fill their day, meaning make their day established based on learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, and only spend a little bit of their time temporarily doing work. Like for example, Chofetz Chaim, the great Chofetz Chaim, he had a shop, and apparently he only kept the shop open enough to earn the amount of money he needed for that day, and then he would close the shop and go and learn Torah. And that's why he ended up writing all the books he wrote, right? Yeah. Only with that attitude can you achieve what you want to achieve spiritually. But with that attitude, which is, what is my priority in life? Is it earning a livelihood? Or, not just earning a livelihood, we all have to learn a livelihood. Is it amassing wealth? And everything is secondary to that. Learning Torah and doing mitzvahs and kindness is secondary to that. Or is my primary focus in this world on Torah and mitzvahs, and work is merely something I fit in between in order to survive? Do I live to work, or do I work to live? Yeah. Attitude. However, so he says here, if a person decides that they're going to spend most of their time, their priority is Torah, and their work is secondary to that. They can be guaranteed, they can be assured, they won't lack anything they need. They might not have the great riches and wealth that others might have, but they will not lack anything. Because God has already guaranteed, promised us that He provides bread for all flesh, for everyone who needs it. Because His kindness lasts forever. Okay? Nothing is too big for God. Middle of the line, about 5 lines up from the bottom. Ukasiv, and it's written in Tehillim. This is our verse here. You see the word in brackets, Tehillim in brackets. Posech es yadech umaspia lechol chai ratzon. Uma shesova la'adam torach v'tzar v'amal ash lepamim nitzradei min ha'olam hazeh min ha'olam haba. A person who is so concerned about this world, is so involved in it, is so busy with it, they get to the point where they are, and I put this in bold. Not only do they lose, so to speak, this world, but they lose the world to come as well. I mean, they're taking themselves out of this world. They are so fixated, they can't see anything. They can't appreciate this world because they're so too busy trying to amass more wealth. Right? They definitely can't even think about the world to come because they're so involved in this world. They lose both worlds. Right? Hakolhu b'shvil shirotze lilech acha hamutaros v'hanagaos b'nei adam. All of this because they're pursuing all the time physical pleasures. Hein heim nagau b'nei adam. This is the truth. This is the real plague. It says v'zehu kol ros ha'adam uchel peros b'olam hazeh. And this is really the most negative thing for a person to eat the fruit in this world. Amal v'kas mishgimi kum acharei Shabbos uchel lechem ha'asavim. Gemara there. Another verse in chapter 127. But we know, that a person can enjoy some of the benefits in this world, but the majority of it awaits for us in the world to come. שמבטא של עולם הזה בטל ואכלו מחוקם על הבנות בשם בביטול תורה מצוות וקדומה. Whereas a person who puts all of the good stuff aside in order to try and have everything in this world ends up losing everything because they can't enjoy it here, and they definitely won't enjoy it
What
there.
about those who seemingly work hard for what they need, but still don't achieve it? And those who just, I suppose I'm thinking, if we've all got them, but we don't all have the minimum. There are some people who struggle for them, no matter what they do and how hard they work and how good they are.
Yeah.
They seem to struggle for them.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Did they get more on my path?
You don't know?
Nobody's come back to tell us.
No. And also, again, you could ask the question: Why do we have a mitzvah tzedakah? If God provides for everybody, why are we expected to give? However much or less we've got, how much or little we've got, why are we expected to give to others who've got less than us?
Yeah.
Okay, because we are given an opportunity to accrue reward, right? Now, why does God decide that a certain person should be a recipient of it, another one a giver of it? That's in God's plan. We don't really understand God's plan. Yeah, but we say in benching, don't we? See, Lorisi Sadiq Neazov, right? I never see a righteous person being forsaken. So yes, they might not have everything they need, but hopefully we don't see someone who's totally abandoned, because that's where human beings step in, right? And then there's the famous Gemara. The Roman emperor asks, I can't remember, it's maybe Rabbi Akiva, why do Jewish people have to circumcise themselves? If God wanted males to be circumcised, why weren't we born circumcised? And Rabbi Akiva explains, because God wants us to become partners with Him in this. It says that God created the world, la'asot, to do, meaning creation was the beginning of creation, so to speak, of this world. Yeah, that we have to then take on and become partners with God. Yeah, I mean that's a very basic answer, but ultimately we don't know. Okay. And then finally, the Olis Re'iyah is another commentary on the Siddur by Rav Kook. He says, our intention, our preparation should be the person should direct themselves towards a true completeness through two things. The first thing is to light themselves up, their intellect, through the teachings of the Torah in order to know God. Okay, so you need to educate yourself to know God through God's works, meaning the Torah. That a person should not be, again, totally consumed by this world. Because he says, even if a person who is able to be constantly intellectually aware, still there's possibility that they follow a path where they are involved in all the activities of this world. So even if, it's very interesting what he's saying here, and it's a deep idea, and I'm trying to understand it myself here. He's saying, so there are two ways of being, and I think we're saying here ultimately this Ben Olam Haba, which is firstly to know the truth by studying the Torah, the source of truth, and secondly, not preventing yourself from being dragged down into this world. He said, however, even if a person who's acquired the first part of it, the intellectual knowledge and the understanding, can still get consumed by the day-to-day stuff, right? He says, what is the antidote to it? It's the beginning of the fourth line, 3 words in on the fourth line. Sabitachon, trust in God. So, because what he's saying is this: intellectually, you could know that God will provide for me. However much effort I put in, is not going to be necessarily commensurate to the results. And therefore you can end up getting more and more involved in this world and losing sight of why we're here. Yeah, again, forgetting the end and it's getting involved too much in the means. Yeah, not seeing the wood for the trees. Right? The antidote to that is bitachon, which is not intellectual, it's emotional. To know in your heart that you can rely on God, that it's not all going to be down to your own efforts. Yeah? Does that make sense? Because Al Kain, Av Kinis Kavhu, base. So he says, even when a person has praised God using the Aleph base, meaning the whole alphabet of found in Psalm 145, Shikola Kol Osios Shel Torah, which includes all of the letters in the Torah, and I think he's saying here again all the secret ideas that are hidden within these words as well. So even if that intellectual knowledge and inquiry and understanding, until a person has reached complete bitachon, trust in God, at the same time, bitachon on its own is not enough unless a person has that intellectual underpinnings as well to know God. Again, the danger is it's all going to be lost. You're just going to get so washed away with everything that's going on. Al Kain as who muftach le'olam haba bios bo shnei elu. In order to be guaranteed of olam haba, meaning being ben olam haba, meaning to remain clear on our purpose here in life, you need both things. Shekonu alidei Tehillim David, which you can acquire through Psalm 145. Omer ba'alef base, v'yesh bo posech et yadecha, which contains both the aleph base and that verse posech et yadecha. It enlightens our bitachon and it removes us from this over-involvement in the world. In order that a person can reach this completeness through their intellect. And the Aleph base, by saying the Aleph base, what it does for us is it reminds us, it teaches us about the truth of the newness of the world. Meaning that God, we talk about God, Borei Olam, He creates the world. Not He created the world in the past, 5,000 years ago, but He's constantly recreating the world. Every single day, the Gemara talks about the idea that God wills the world to exist on a constant basis. If for a moment God stopped willing the world to exist, it would stop existing. So therefore, creation is a constant, ongoing act. We need to remind ourselves of that. Yeah. How would you do that? By saying the Aleph base in Tehillim. Because those are the building blocks. That's how God creates the world. The 3 lines up from the end. Because through the holy letters of the Torah, God created the world. Again, Midrash tells us, God looked into the Torah and created the world. The Torah predated the world. It existed before the world existed. Meaning it's a blueprint for the world. Not the story aspect. I know looking at what things hadn't happened yet. But the Torah meaning the teachings of the Torah. The truth of the Torah. Yeah, the values, the mitzvahs. Yeah, which predated the historical aspects of it. But the teachings of the Torah, the truth of the Torah, was the blueprint through which God looked at the Torah as a blueprint. Right, I need a world which will enable a person to be able to blow shofar, put on tefillin, eat matzah. That's how He created the world. Right, it's the plans. Yeah, and therefore we need to somehow tap into that, access that act of creation. And we have to remove ourselves from those the ideas of the heretics. That God created the world and then stopped having any involvement in it. It's a one-time act. We need to remain with our faith in the newness of the world, the newness of the world, and God's hashgacha, God's constant involvement in it and interest in it. Posech es yadecha more al hashgacha. When we say posech es yadecha, well, this is why we have to concentrate on it. because we're not just making a statement which is, oh God, yes, you open your hand to provide for all our living need. What we're saying is, God, you not only do you create the world, but you are constantly involved in its running. V'az yesh shalem b'deus harayos lish emunim, and through that we become complete in our understanding, the right understanding of a person of faith. And because we are people of faith, then we are therefore people of the world to come. Because everybody has a place in the world to come, but you've got to have faith in God. Okay, so I hope that's helped us understand a little bit the depths of Ashrei, why it's so central, why we have to say it 3 times, at least to get it right once, why we have to concentrate at least on Posech Yisradecha, why the alphabet acrostic is so central to it, and the idea of the creation aspect of it, and why we talk about it being a person who says it 3 times a day is guaranteed of a place in the world to come, not literally, but theoretically gives us the best chance to avoid the trap of being so consumed by everything that goes on in this physical world that we lose sight of the fact that there's a whole other world out there, a world of spirituality that we're aiming towards. And this is merely passing through and a means to an end.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.